Hello and welcome to another free code session. My name is Jason Bach. I've decided to leave the profiling performance improvement stuff where it is. There wasn't anything completely obvious looking at the profiling results. There may be some other things I can do in the future, but I'm just going to try to be more cognizant of maybe if I change this or fix that, I'll get these little wins. The only thing I think I could do is just a complete rewrite and try to reduce the number of times I go through members and do something completely different. And I'm just not really interested in doing that, at least not right now. So I'm going to leave that for now. There was a couple things I changed. One of them is it's here. It's in get description. So, and this is what I mean by finding the small things and changing them incrementally. So this one, let's see if I can do the history and yeah, let's compare these two. So you notice that what I changed is I used to just make the list, add the stuff from the constructor and the named arguments, and then say, well, if there actually was something in there, then do the join, otherwise just return string empty. And what I did is I changed it so that I said, well, if you don't have any of these, then just return the name. Otherwise, go through the work of actually adding in the argument parts. But when I create the list, also allocate it so that's going to have enough array elements for both of them. And then you add those in, and the result of that was if I close these out and I captured those results in not integration tests, but performance tests. So the pre-allocated list is the one that matters compared to what I was currently doing. And you can see if you look through this document, and this is in the repo if you want to look at it too, the time is usually under the baseline. There's one case, and that's when the attribute, I think, had nothing in it, if I remember right. But in all cases, the memory allocation is slightly smaller. It's about, I think, 10% smaller. So it's a win. It's not a big win. We're talking nanoseconds, we're talking very small gains, but it's something. And if a type has a number of attributes that it needs to render either on the method or on a parameter or on the type itself, those things add up. I put it in. It was a change that was worth it, even though it's a very small one. So that was about it. So I'm going to move on to something called scoped. What is scoped, you may wonder? Well, it's this. It's the scoped keyword. Now, I have the link, I'll put it in the description as well, to where you can find out more information about this keyword. It has to do with structs and ref structs specifically, and I think it's also, allowing them to declare ref fields, and then the scope thing comes into play, and it's sort of like how you can do some memory handling in Rust, which I will admit fully I know very little to nothing about Rust, so I can't comment on that. But the end of the day, let's see if I can find the word scoped here, is you can put a scoped modifier on either a function member, I think it's a parameter or a local variable. Yeah, that's where it is. Okay. Now again, what exactly it does and what it helps, I think is kind of an edge case, although a valid one. The point of why I'm bringing this up though is because you can put it on a parameter. And I thought, what does it actually do in rocks? So I originally did something in SharpLab. And as you can see over here, the things that I did, I'm like, well, when you did inheritance, it didn't matter. It was fine. So it's kind of like, I guess you don't need it. But then somebody pointed out that, oh, yes, you do. So if you have something like this, I think if it's not a ref, even though span is a ref struct, but it's not called. You have to have span or scoped here. You'll actually get an error if you don't do that. So, and if you add it, like in the case I did with SharpLab. So for example, if I have these and I just put in scoped, it doesn't break anything. Okay, so it's fine to add it in, and it should be added in if it's there. Now, the interesting thing is SharpLab says, well, it has a ScopedRef attribute. But as you're going to see in a moment, when I generated this, it doesn't put ScopedRef on any of these. In fact, if I did ScopedRef, it's going to be like, well, what is that? I think it's because it doesn't know where it is. I'm kind of playing around here right now. So it might be in compiler services. Okay, that would be my guess. So we're gonna find out first, how do you discover that this keyword is here? If it's an attribute or what really it is. You know, actually, let's do this. Let's compile the IL. And let's see, because then we'll actually see the real name of it. I have scoped. So we use a scoped reference. Scoped ref value type, yep. And, oh no, we're looking up here. So the parameter has it's from compiler services. The reason I mentioned the thing about the attribute is the test that I wrote, I don't think that attribute showed up in the generated results. It's like, how do you actually figure out it's there? So we're going to be going on an adventure. The end result is I took some code that I did generate, and this is the snippet here. And then I just dumped it to a file, and there's essentially two places that you have to change. The projected callback that's generated, because this is a ref struct, will need scoped on it. Actually, now that I think about this and I talk about it, in the case where you have something like this, let me put that back into SharpLab over here, and I do that example, okay? Of course, that's going to bark. But let's do something like this. Let's say int, and we do q because naming is great. And we'll say scoped ref int. Okay, and now we say you got to implement that. And that's okay because, again, I don't think you technically need it for an int. Like, you can do that too. And that's actually right, because if it's not a ref struct, then you can't just put in scoped. So refs and ref struct. So if I make it a ref, but the actual type is not a ref struct, then you technically don't need to put in scoped here. You can, it's fine if you do. But in this case, you have to put scoped here. Okay, so we might as well just do it. And you're going to see now, you cannot use the variable scoped in this context because it may expose reference variables outside of their declaration scope. Essentially, it's saying you can't return it. I think you can use it internally, but you can't return it. Again, I'm not the expert on the scoped keyword. Let's do this. We're going to already have a branch set up, and I want to do this in a test. I think I've got ref struct generator tests. Yes. So we want to do something like, let's grab the code that I had, and I think this should be sufficient to drive things. So let's come back here. Let's make a test. Public static async task create. And actually I think it's going to be a make as well. A make we would want to at least have, so we're going to want to do a make of this one as well, because it's got to be the same thing. Create when parameter is scoped async, and then we're going to want, and I'm going to have to recopy make. So we'll have, that looked ugly. Still looks ugly. Let's move this over, and then we'll do var generated code is equal to that, and then we'll grab one of these, and it's going to be scoped parameter. Now let's copy all this and make that a make, which means we got to do that. Okay, so let me grab the code that it generates with the error, and then we'll actually go in and try to fix it. Okay, I got the code generated. It is failing. I did put in one for ref int, and the reason why is because I realized it also gets a callback generated. And we want to make sure that in both cases it's done correctly. I don't think it gets all of the other stuff generated, like argument for span of int is done, but not for int because it's just a ref. But you need a custom delegate because you can't just use an action or a func with ref. So in this case, we also have to make sure that it's going to have scoped here. So in anticipation of what we need this to be scoped here. We're going to also need this to be scoped. And then I think the only other place is down in the mock when we say do work, that needs to be scoped, and then that needs to be scoped. And I don't think anything down here needs to be done. Now for the make, I believe it's the same thing. We want scoped here, and we're also going to want scoped here. So we want to make sure now we know, I think, the code state of what we want. Now, as they said in Aliens, all we need is a deck of cards. So how do we figure out that in the projected callback, you need to have scoped? And the answer is, I don't know. So wait, I didn't mean build. I meant configuration manager. Yeah, we're in debug. Okay. So let's go into the builder and the create, and we want to have, where's the projected delegate builder? Here we go. So in here, somewhere in the parameters, we need to know, is there anything like saying, oh, yeah, at this point, we don't have enough. So what we need to go to is the models and say for the parameter, on a parameter, what actually scoped kind? Oh, well, is equal to what? A value scoped to the enclosing blocker method. A ref scoped to the enclosing blocker method. You can have, again, for a ref struct, I think it could be, it could be scoped. And you can also say it's scoped ref, and then the span of int or something like that. So I think in those cases, both of these would show up. I really don't know. So in our generated code here, yeah, this is just a scoped. This is a scoped ref. Let's just see what happens. This is an enumeration, right? So we can actually put this in. And actually, that reminds me, where is that test? There is a test. Multiple model generator test. Yes, here. I want to put a note here. You're going to see why. This test, if it fails, may also be maybe an indication that something changed with the models such that quality broke. What do I mean by that? It happened when I changed something for some performance stuff. I added some member count thing and trying to make it a record was being a pain. So I just made it a class. That broke this because having that as a class, it doesn't have a quality set for the values, which is what a what's the word I'm looking for? Which is what a record would do for you automatically. Then that broke. And so I wanted to put this note in here to come back and say, hey, if this breaks, this may be why. And you want to go back. There's some other things I want to do testing that I found from an article that I need to eventually come back to is to put in to say, you know, make some insurance checks on how I'm doing things. But an enum, that's easy. So we can put in scope type here. So let's do that. So we're going to say internal scoped kind is that. And there will always be a value. So we'll put that here is scoped kind equal to parameter scope kind. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so now we can come back to here when we do the Projected return value delegate name. How is that actually defined? Return type. That's the name? Whatever. Okay. I think this is what we care about, because for whatever reason, I don't know off the top of my head why this isn't actually putting anything in here, but there's a reason, and I'm not going to debate it right now. This is what we care about. So we want to have scoped in here. We want to say var scoped is equal to scoped kind is either equal to scope kind. And I want to include the ones we know about. Not just say none. If that's true, then we want to say scoped with a space. Otherwise, string.empty. And so if we put that in front here, scope direction. There we go. So if it is there, it will have a space there after it. If it's not, it's just empty. Okay, that's the first one. Now we need to go into the create, where we're building methods both with the return or not. And again, that's actually interesting, because let's grab this, go back into SharpLab, and let's just say we have a class, but this one returns void. Now we got to change the return type here. Yeah, see, you don't need to put scoped here. Yeah. So, and there's no reason to return anything here. Now we could say scoped, I believe, and that's fine. Doesn't matter. But yeah, you don't technically need it in that case. I was just making sure of that. So, but we're always going to put it in no matter what. Okay, so that does that one. Now let's go to when we're building the methods and mock method value builder. And we're going to want to do repeated code, which is fun, but you know, we got to do it. So we want to say here, scoped, and then the method parameters, scoped. This is where I feel like I do a lot of double work, and I should really clean that up. But in that case, now we should have the method signature right for a value. As I just saw with a void, you don't need it, but we're going to be consistent and just put it in anyway. Which makes me think my test should change so that I actually show for a scoped that we are doing, for a method that returns nothing, returns a void, we're doing that. Okay, so that does those. We got that there now. Now we want to go into the make. When we're doing a value builder, same thing. Nope, don't need space there. I hope I didn't do space on the last one I did. No, I didn't. Okay. Yeah, see our method signature, we just do what we get from method parameters, so whatever. And then here. And that goes here. And don't put the space there. Okay, so I think I got everything. What we're going to do is pause it, run the test, but I'm going to come back into the tests here and put in, before I forget. Yeah, I want to do work with span. And this means I got to change the generated code, but then I want to have a void here and return do work with span, and then do work with int. And then we'll copy that down in here so that we have the same thing. And then we got to change the generate code here. So that, okay, so I'm going to run the test, get the code back in place, and we'll see if things are working the way I expect them to. Before I forget, I had to come back because I was like, I got an error, and I'm like, what's going on? Well, it helps to write code that's correct. See what's wrong here? I forgot to put a void. I'll be back. Those two tests are passing now, so that's all good. We now seem to have support for scoped parameters, and that's all we care about. We don't care about local variables or anything like that, because that's not what Rox is caring about. It just cares about the members themselves. So we got that working. What I'm going to do now is do the shut down, start up again. The other thing though I need to do is put in an actual test in the integration tests to make sure that this works as expected, because yeah, I generated the code and that all compiles, but is it working? So I'm going to shut down, start up, put some tests in for integration tests to make sure that it works. And I believe I already have tests around just ref structs as it is anyway. There should be, yeah, ref struct tests. So I already have some tests around that. I can just make another type that uses scoped, see what happens there. If that works, then I'll run all the codegen tests and see if those pass. Okay, it took a little coercing to get this to work. I forgot a couple of things. And I'm looking at these. I'm like, why am I calling things foo? Foo's a bad name. Foo's a bad name. It does work. It gives back a success. So, okay, gonna go off and run all the codegen tests and we'll see if that works. They all pass as well. So I think we have a new feature supported. A couple things though I want to remind myself of, because I want to have some notes, and this isn't for here. Let's see if I can get rid of the repeated method signature. I'll remember what this means. Code I do in the method generators for create make seems okay, but verify. As I showed when I was doing the work, I feel like I'm going through that section twice, and I'm hoping I can get rid of that. So I want to at least investigate that and check that out and make sure that I can actually do that. The other thing I also want to do, and this is maybe a little, I don't want to say petty, I don't think it's petty, but do a comparison between rocks, MOQ, and substitute, and fake it easy for features. And I want to be objective, because there are some things that are in these that rocks doesn't do, and I do that on purpose. Like I don't have as much flexibility around setting expectations or anything like that. It's very opinionated in the sense of you create expectations, you set them up, you run your mock, you verify. That's it. It's somewhat different than the other ones that you can have flexibility as to when you do what, and do you have loose and strict, and I don't do that. So there's going to be some that rocks just doesn't have. What I'm more interested in is, more specifically, support for language features like ref structs, ref out, pointers, methods with lots of parameters, etc. And there's probably some other ones that can, I just did one, scoped, etc. There are other ones I can do, and just to show, yes, they're just not something that these other tools these packages can do, and rocks can, mostly because of the underlying foundation. It just uses source generation. So it can generate anything it needs in C# to support what C# can do. I had a conversation with somebody at work about rocks, and I was mentioning that because he noticed I tagged a C# issue that talks about allowing ref structs to implement interfaces or something like that, or it tied into that. If you can pass in a ref struct to a generic, that would be what I would want, because then I could eliminate some code. And so I tagged that. I have something I have in my notes referencing that, and he saw that for some reason. So he was just talking to me. He's like, about this issue. And I said, the thing is, I get around it right now because I just generate some types to make it work, and you just don't notice it when you're using rocks. And he was like, that's really cool. And I was like, yeah. I don't know if he said that was cool, but that's at least what I heard in my head. I would rather get away from that. But in any event, I just want to see what is different between all these frameworks and which ones do support things and which ones don't. Again, for things like pointers, for things like scoped, those are very small edge cases. Ref structs, not so much, because spans can show up more often than not, at least more than you probably think. But having a interface that has a pointer as a parameter, it's not common at all. So, but Rocks does support that. So I'm going to merge this in and consider it done, and we'll see what happens in the next episode. Thank you all for watching. Leave comments and questions below. See you in the next episode.